And welcome to another Biddle on Saturday, July 18th, 2020. How's everybody doing?
Doing good,
Well.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Well, if I did everything right, we should be live and everybody should be able to hear us. And I don't know, does Zoom...
The i3 in particular, because every distribution's, the config files are different, and it's so important to have the muscle memory about what key bindings to use that it really takes time in order to get used to those key bindings. But I thought it was really good. I had two issues. One was that I couldn't get the standard Regolith install to work. I downloaded it twice and I tried it multiple times, and the installation it wouldn't boot for me. So I actually had to install Ubuntu and load the PPA in order to get it to work. And the key bindings are very, very different than the standard key bindings for i3. They were using the Alt key an awful lot with the Windows key. A lot of times with a lot of i3s, to do some of the keystrokes, it would be like super shift, but Regolith had it, so a lot of times it was super Alt, which was confusing me a lot. And I really wanted for this week to try it with the standard key bindings and not to customize the config file the way I would normally use i3. So that's how I would really like to, if I had a second week to work on it, what I would do is the second week would be to customize the config file the way that I would use i3 and see it. But overall, it worked really well. I really liked it. It seemed stable. Everything really worked, and I enjoyed it. I just had to keep looking at the. I always had to have a web browser open with all the, the keystrokes so I knew how to open up everything.
Well, when I said I didn't get to try it, I did try it, but I didn't get to play around with it. So when I installed it, Dave, I saw that little shortcut thingy on the right hand side that showed you the shortcuts, but then as soon as I hit the high DPI, it was gone. And so yeah, so I guess we obviously need to spend more time with these distros than a week. The only reason that we've been doing a week is because we had so many Ubuntu flavors to get through. So we probably should have given Regolith more than a week, especially with it being i3. I liked it the first time I tried it. Like I said, I just didn't get a whole lot this time. But yeah, you definitely need more than a week to check this out.
I accidentally did the same thing. They have the window on the right hand side with all the that tells you all the key bindings, and the first thing I did was accidentally close that. And then I was like, oh man, I couldn't figure out how to open it back up at first for the longest time. So I had to open up Firefox, and luckily I just did a Google search for Regolith key bindings, and it was there. So I had to have Firefox open the whole time I was using it.
Yeah. Yep. Same. All right, Daniel, what did you think of Regolith?
I thought it was pretty good. I installed it. I only got about 2 hours to play around with it, 2 or 3 hours. I agree with Dave that the key bindings threw me because I'm used to having them a certain way myself when I do use it. So I was constantly looking at that little help screen. Now, fortunate for me, I don't have like the super high DPI monitors. All my monitors are 1080p, so it didn't really go away on me, but I still had to keep going to it. I'd never thought to even do the web page. It probably would have been easier for me to get to all those key bindings. But I mean, once I started using them, you kind of get in a rhythm after a while when you use it for a bit. But it's i3 and it's pretty cool. It was stable. The install went perfectly fine. I didn't have any real problems with the install. So I definitely feel like it's an improvement over the last time. Like a lot of the little things that were causing issues last time, I didn't see. Again, I only spent, a couple, 3 hours in it, but much more improved. So I like it. And I like i3 a lot. So I think it's good.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's pretty great too. I didn't get really any chance to try it this week, but and I think switching to i3 does take some time, like we mentioned. Yeah, you can't just do that on a short, time. But yeah. All right, moving on. Joshua, I see you got your hand up. Go right ahead.
All right, so here we are with Regolith. One of the probably not as much well-known distros, especially with the i3 window manager as its desktop. i3 is complicated, and let's be fair, the only way that you can really get used to it is honestly if you can just learn the keyboard shortcuts and everything. And that's what I really liked about the launcher is that, or the side taskbar, is that you can always just keep it to the side so you'll have it right there and it'll tell you how to navigate and stuff like that, and eventually you'll get used to it. So I personally think i3 is pretty cool. I actually wonder if I can get that working with GNOME. That'd be pretty cool. But some people like to use it with Plasma, and i3 can be pretty beautiful and amazing. And otherwise, the way how Regolith handled it is honestly amazing. I mean, don't ask me how Manjaro, on the other hand, gets i3 to work well. I don't know. They just stashed i3 in Manjaro, and boom, they got a beautiful i3. It's like, what? But anyways, Regolith on track. So the launcher is something new. Launcher, and just like calling it launcher. The side control tutorial thingy is, as usual, it's pretty great. Otherwise, they keep with the GNOME software, which is not a bad idea for i3. But I don't know if i3 is more Qt based or GDK based or whatnot. Like I don't know what exactly would fit best with it, but it does put in a nice blend. Otherwise, to install, I actually had to open up the terminal and just type Ubiquity. Probably not the best idea. I'm sure there was a better way to do it, but let's be real, terminal is kind of the only way you can navigate. But otherwise, of course, as a distribution and for i3 management, of course, Regolith does excel in both. So positive A+ for me.
All right, thanks, Joshua. Yeah, I don't think it really matters Qt or GTK. It's all C, so it really doesn't matter probably much. Yeah, I think you can mix and match the way you feel, and having I think oftentimes you see i3 and XFCE blend together. So having the GNOME stack with i3 is a little different. So it's kind of cool. Eris, I see you got your hand up. Go right ahead.
So I installed Regolith, and usually when I install the distros, I usually watch a YouTube video while I wait. And this time the installer had like an error, and it said it had to undo changes. I waited like an extra 40 minutes and it never completed. So then I reinstalled it. I didn't have Wi-Fi on. I don't know if me watching the YouTube video made a difference, but this time it did install. I wish I had more time to use Regolith. I like the idea of simplifying the window managers because it can be daunting to configure. The menu on the side, I wish was like a pop-up in the same way that Elementary has the pop-up for the shortcuts. If they could do that in the floating window, I think that'd be better because you could just use a key combination and pop it up anytime you need to look at your shortcuts. I don't know if that's feasible, but that would be an improvement in my eyes. And overall, it was good. Like I said, I wish I had more time though to test it out.
Okay, thank you. Jinda, how was your trip down Regolith Lane?
Well, it installed fantastic. Went through VirtualBox, and I went to the USB-C port to an SSD, and then I rebooted my computer off that SSD hard drive actually, and it worked fine. I didn't have any issues with it. That little menu in the right-hand side did help me out a lot. I've never used this before in my life. It was quick, it was snappy. The only issue I did have was when I opened up HTOP, as soon as it started, it was like 500 megs, and it kept growing. I went online. It seems that some people experience a memory leak. in the system. I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but I'm always, the first thing I always do is go on HTAP and see how big, how big it is when I'm running it, and it kept growing. I didn't really find much of a solution, but it seemed like it's happened in the past and it keeps going back and forth. I don't think it's Regolith. I think it's something to do with i3. If somebody else knows, hopefully they can speak up. Other than that, it was great. I really did like it.
Nate?
You muted,
Whoops.
Nate? Oh, yeah, there you go.
Whoops, my bad. Jinda, how long did you let it go before it you had to shut it down?
I never did. I never did shut it down. I got up to about 1.8, 1.8 gig. It was about, and it was about 10, 12, 20 minutes in it took. And I never did shut it down. I just noticed there was a memory leak. And I just said, well, I'll play with it for a little while and I'll keep trying it every once in a while and, keep going from there. I got 32 gigs of RAM. It probably would have taken a while to fill it.
Did you try closing anything in the process to see if you could get the memory to drop back down?
I had nothing open. The only thing I had open was HTOP.
That sounds like a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a problem.
Yeah. Well, I went online and it wasn't like it was a mystery. If you go online and type in, and boot, Regolith and blah, 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 memory leak, it does, people are saying it's happening. So, I mean, it isn't something new. You're right. That's what I thought to do. I tried the stupid things that I would think to try. I tried.
Well, golly. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you.
Hopefully, maybe we can help the Regolith folks out. Now, I wonder if somebody else had this issue, like Vince. Vince always has issues. Did you have an issue with Regolith?
Vince does have some issues with his computers.
What are you trying to say here?
I'm just trying to take the spotlight off of me.
I complain
Vince.
a lot, maybe.
No.
So I gave Regolith a go, and as a regular i3 user, I echo sort of the comments from Dave and Daniel earlier about muscle memory and key bindings. But I guess I'm thinking that the point of tiling window managers is really to customize it to the way you want to use it. So, I mean, if you have one shorter finger or a longer finger, you could use Alt or Control, for example, more often than others. I installed it via the PPA onto an existing Ubuntu GNOME installation that I had, and it was so fast, literally 30 seconds, log out, log back in, and I was back into Regolith, and it just was smooth as silk. It just worked. The little overlay that they've got with the key bindings, I did a little bit of digging, and I found that it's called Remontoire Toggle. And I actually think that, I could be wrong, but I think that it could be something of their own making. And it's actually really clever. So with your config files, anyone who knows i3, you've got to go into your config files to change stuff. If you format your comments in a specific sort of way, it'll actually pull it automatically into the overlay and categorize it. And that's really neat, because one of the complaints that I sort of had with when we tested Regolith previously was that there was a conky that had all the key bindings that didn't fit on my screen. I was using a laptop with 1600 by 900 resolution, so it wouldn't all fit. And something else, just to touch on what Dan Simmons was saying about how they integrate it with the GNOME tools. It's something that you don't realize until you install a tiling window manager from scratch yourself onto a distro that doesn't really normally accept it, or has it configured for that distro, is that when you first install something like an i3, you don't have any of the applets that you would get that you take for granted on a full-blown DE, like a volume control applet or a network manager applet or just something simple like that. And you've got to go digging around to find all that stuff to have it load up automatically when you log into i3. Personally, I use the XFCE tools when I use i3, and because I find they just work easily. And I got the idea from checking out distros like Manjaro, because otherwise you're kind of expected to use terminal sort of command line tools to configure everything otherwise. I like also that they this time around they surfaced more the different modes. So everyone knows you can tile vertically or tile horizontally, but excuse me. Last time I don't recall them surfacing the tabbed tiling sort of feature as much. Tabbed tiling is where you have all your windows can be maximized, and you just have each window as a tab, like on your browser. So that helps a lot of people if you're not liking all your windows squashed and tiny if you have more than a few. Overall, I love the work and polish that they've put into it since the last time we looked into it. I think it's got to be my go-to distro if anyone asks that they want to try out a tiling window manager. I think it's fantastic, and keep up the good work, guys.
Yeah, I really like that that whole idea of that menu where you could just drop whatever area that you wanted to go into for shortcuts and look at each one. I thought that was excellent because, you know, I wish we knew how to toggle it on and off so that I could get back to it.
I figured that out. It's super shift question mark.
Super shift question. See, they should imprint that on the desktop.
It's actually in that menu, but you need to have looked at it first,
right,
before you close it.
That would have been helpful throughout the week, let me tell you. But yeah, that is an awesome feature. I love that. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I did play about with it a little bit, but as you probably know, tiling window managers are not really my thing. But I did give it a go. It does work well. And the menu on the front that gives you some of the keyboard shortcuts, bindings, whatever you call them, it was helpful. But I'd still prefer to use a graphical user interface where I can just click and it works. If the only thing in Linux was a tiling window manager, I probably wouldn't be in Linux. I'd still probably be with Windows 10.
Well, that's why we have such great choices, Tony. You can have whatever you want.
I'm so pleased we do, because tiling window managers are not really my choice. But if you were going to use one, it certainly worked well and it was good. That's trying to be about as positive as it can be.
Yep. Vince, what do you think about, say, well, you regularly use Arco, so like comparing the two, is it just a config thing where, you know, it really doesn't matter, you're going to change it anyway, or like how does it compare to one that's been around for a long time?
I think you might want to choose one that is closest maybe to what you might feel like you're going to be using, and then you end up configuring it anyway yourself. Because you might find that remembering a certain combination, so super, I don't know, Alt V or something, whatever combination you want, just doesn't fit your mindset of how you memorize things, because you got to use some memory there. For me, I use a lot of, I think it's Control and Super to open my programs. So all my programs are Control Super if I want to open a program. And then if I want to change the orientation of windows, I'll use another one. So I kind of group them into little areas like that. So because I obviously don't have that little window thing on mine, because that's something specific to Regolith. So it's kind of I went with Arco because of the little community that I have and what Eric Dubois does with his videos. So we learn a lot there, and it's a lot of fun. But I could easily have gone Regolith had it been around when I was starting out.
Yep. All right, Colin.
Yes, I installed it. I confused myself.
And
I can see it's good if you're into that sort of thing. Probably like Vince said, if you haven't probably used i3 before, you'll probably be okay with, because it's all got super and something else. So at least you know the super key is used mainly with most things. It's just trying to remember the other ones. So it seems to work pretty well. It's just that every time I tried to use it and it's like, all right, I want to float a window. Oh, yeah, what was that? You spend all this time going through that menu. Where's the floating window? Where's the floating window? You know, But I suppose it's like Vince said, it's just muscle memory. If I worked on that for a long time, I would probably just get it just like that. But I suppose I'm just used to the old click and just click and do this and click and do that. It's for me, it's probably easy. But I do like the fact that Super and Spacebar was very easy to use, and it's got a nice searchable menu with the with Super and Spacebar. So that was quite nice. I like that. So that was easy to find everything. The only thing you can't find in that search is the keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, but I do like Aris's idea with the fact that it should be like a pop-up as well. I mean, the idea of that one is good. I think it's a floating window by the looks of it, because I actually closed it with Super Shift Q. So I didn't realize I was on that window. I thought I was on another one, and I actually closed that. And that's when the panic set in. Because I thought I was closing another window, and actually closed that the keyboard shortcut window. So I didn't realize I'd actually toggled over to that. So, and I don't think I've noticed with the buttons on certain windows, when you hit the tab key and all that, it's very hard to see which button you're on. So that could be highlighted a bit better, I reckon. And the fact that which window you're on could be slightly highlighted a bit more as well, because I didn't realize I was on that that keyboard shortcut window. So there was a few little things like that I thought that wasn't obvious. But besides that, seems to work pretty good anyway. So it's just not for me. I don't think I'm a i3 user. I've come to the conclusion.
Well, I don't think anybody goes out to find i3. I think you have to see it in action somewhere and say, I like that idea. And then go and have the desire to learn it, because you do. You're going to have to remember certain keys. And, if you're just a guy that wants to just click windows and stuff, it's probably not for you. So
what you're saying is, don't seek out i3, let i3 seek out you?
That's possible what I could be saying, Nate.
Yeah, just let it come to you.
Yeah.
It will present itself.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I say that is because for people who say maybe they're not so much into trying i3, but they just try it, you're really not going to give it the opportunity that it needs to sink in. You're not going to give it the time unless you really want to use it. So I would say you probably don't try i3 until the second time you really want to try it, and then you try it, because I don't know. That's just me. All right. Anybody else have anything on Regolith Linux? Okay. Well, it was kind of short. That was kind of my fault for not getting a whole lot of time to try it, but it is what it is. I think from this point on, we're going to take a break for a while from distros, and we're just going to talk about other stuff that we want to talk about. Now, there's nothing saying you can't try a distro that you want to try and then come on here and talk about it. And that's not saying people won't get together and say, hey, let's try this at some point. But for the next week or so, maybe a couple of weeks, I don't know, we're going to take a break from the distro talk. All right. On to emails and discourse and all kinds of comments and stuff. We are going to get into later our list. We're going to continue our list that we were doing before, but we will get into that. But I did get an email, and it was actually about our distro section, and it was from Milton, and he asks basically, which distro truly handles high DPI correctly for Optimus laptops, including for both NVIDIA and Radeon GPUs, Wayland or X11. He said we should really test them out and see what works. For the distro testing and user comments, best would be to ask them which CPU and graphics card they have, Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, dedicated or hybrid, make and model, and this would provide valuable context to their comments. So I think this would be a little bit too detailed maybe for a distro challenge. But if you guys have any comments or suggestions on which are the best distros for that purpose with high DPI and with Optimus laptops, you're more than welcome to jump in.
What exactly is, when you say high DPI, what are the actual numbers associated with that? Is it anything above 1080p? Anything above 1440p? What's like the cutoff? Like, nope, you're no longer high DPI. Is it an actual dot pitch ratio?
Adam can answer this the best, I believe.
Adam,
what's the
educate me.
question?
Define high DPI. Like, what does it actually mean? We always say it and throw it out there, but what does it mean?
So I think the standard pixel density on a screen is 96 DPI, I believe. So basically anything higher than 96 would be considered high DPI. So it'd be the resolution as a ratio to the size of the screen.
Okay. So if I got one of those giant 1440p monitors, that wouldn't necessarily be considered high DPI.
Correct. So if you got like a 65-inch 4K display, that's not very high DPI. But if you got a 27-inch 4K display, that's a very high DPI.
Okay.
Because it's dots per inch, right? So
right.
Yeah.
See, I knew he could explain it well.
That's perfect.
But anyway,
when it comes to Optimus laptops, I've got one here. Mine is Optimus, and I find that a lot of the Ubuntu base at the moment, they install NVIDIA, and it seems to handle the Optimus really well these days. So just recently, I've noticed that there's no hassles with the Optimus at all.
I was going to say the same thing. I have a Dell laptop that has NVIDIA, Optimus. It's an older one though, so it really only works with the 390 driver. It won't work with the new ones.
I think mine's the same, Dan. I think
Yep.
mine's the same 390 as well, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will say anything 2004, it just seems to work really well. It installs and it just does its thing as far as whether if you're gaming, it wants to use the performance mode, and most of the time it just idles along when you're web surfing or stuff like that.
So is that totally reliant on NVIDIA and the drivers of that, or are there other drivers involved in making that work?
That's probably coming from NVIDIA. Yeah, I think so.
I don't know what magic they've done, but and maybe Dan knows the same thing here. When I used to install NVIDIA, as soon as you had, I think it was xorg.conf file, black screen instantly.
Yep.
Right. That's what used to happen all the time with me. So I'd have to drop to a TTY, delete that xorg.conf, and then you'd get back into your computer. Right. That doesn't do that anymore. You may come across some distros that it does. I'm pretty sure Linux Mint's working okay with that too. I'm pretty sure. So
yeah, the new Linux Mint 20 is for sure.
Okay. Yep.
I got to throw in there. Also, Manjaro runs good on the Optimus laptop that I have, except you have to use that special command to make something run on the NVIDIA.
Yeah,
Manjaro.
Manjaro's got their own special sauce that if you run their hardware tool, it will pick up on that and install the Bumblebee stuff and do its magic thing.
Big Pod. You're muted, dude.
Well, I have a HP laptop with 1050 Ti mobile, and I always had problem with it. It is, some distros don't like it. It is a really finicky graphics card, and I can run Ubuntu on it without any problems. Its installer does the magic itself. But even on Manjaro, where it has that hardware detection tool, it does quite have a problem with it. I have to do most of the stuff myself. On Arch, it's a manual process all the way, but to get it working, you sometimes have to do quite a bit yourself. It all depends on the specific GPU you have and sometimes even on specific time that GPU was produced. So it all depends on many factors. It's not like saying this is how it is and that's all release. Because I've seen laptops with 1060 to just get Linux running like that without any problems. And on my laptop, it is a pain to get it running sometimes.
Right. Does anybody here is anybody here running high DPI with the Optimus? Because I think that was his original question, which one truly handles high DPI correctly for Optimus laptops? So
yeah, so my laptop only does 1080p. So I mean, I wouldn't really consider that super high DPI. I mean, it is.
Mine as well.
Yeah, it's a smaller screen,
Same here.
obviously. So it's 17 inches versus your normal 22 or 3 or 4, or whatever your monitor is. So it is a little higher DPI than what you would normally have, obviously, being a laptop, but it's not. I wouldn't call it high DPI per se.
Mine is 15 inches, but I don't run it in any high DPI mode or scaling mode. Because I have, thankfully, for now, a good eyesight, but that could change soon.
That'll change as you get older, Big Pod. Trust me.
Yeah, and
change for me.
And because glasses are in family quite abundant, I'm just waiting on the day I'm gonna have to get some. But thankfully, for now, I'm okay.
It's an interesting question, Rocco, whether whether those two situations are separate or whether does he have a problem with the actual Optimus itself with the NVIDIA, or is it just the HIDPI he's concerned about, or is it both scenarios?
Well, I think the idea. Well, okay, so me reading the email, it sounds to me like he's looking for the handling of the high DPI the best, but he also mentions including both NVIDIA and Radeon GPUs. So
right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't have that answer, and without you guys having a lot of high DPI laptops to test it on, I don't think we're going to get to that answer. But
yeah, I'd be curious what's out there for laptops with NVIDIA and 4K capabilities. I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you, Milton, for the email, and maybe we helped. I don't think so, but maybe we did. Probably not. Okay, moving on. There was a couple YouTube comments that I wanted to get to from the Biddle Europe and the regular Biddle last week, and I had mentioned Michael had helped me with the audio visualizer, and I just wanted to read his comment. He said, being the relentless attention-seeking individual that I am, it's perfectly acceptable to say my last name. So glad you got Visualizer working, and please keep up the good work. Michael Kornblum, that is the guy's name who helped me out with the audio visualizer, getting it working. And again, yes, it's working fantastic. So thank you, Michael. Last week, we talked about streaming services on that app list that we're going to get to later. And a lot of you guys had different opinions on different streaming services. And there was a comment from Tax Action. He said, check out the article by Lycan called The Ultimate Music Streaming Services Guide 2020. The article covers in detail the sound quality, price range, and all of the popular music streaming services. And by the way, he uses Google Chrome, Edge, and Vivaldi. So I am going to post a link to that article where if you guys want to check it out, you're more than welcome to. But JJ had mentioned, I think it was JJ last week, talked about Qobuz.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got to say, JJ, I was really shocked. It's actually pretty good.
Cool. That's cool.
It has a huge library of music. It's got CD quality and lossless quality waves, studio quality, I should say. So you can have your pick of what kind of quality you want. It's going to be, I only have a month trial, so who knows if I'm going to even keep it, but it's $14.99 a month. And I think the only thing lacking, comparatively speaking, to something like Spotify with Qobuz is the discovery, like we were talking about, where Spotify has like radio stations. If you pick an artist, you can pull up a radio station and it'll play similar artists. Qobuz isn't quite that detailed in the discovery, but it does offer a really good service with a lot of high quality music. So if you know what you're looking for and you already have your favorites picked out, it's not a bad service to try out. Big Pod, go ahead.
Well, since you mentioned streaming services and Spotify, since last week the situation with me changed because I used to use everything else besides Spotify. I used YouTube and my own music. Now I actually in Slovenia got Spotify service, so I switched to that and it is running quite well for me. And I listen to that most of the time now. It works great, so why not?
Well, nice. Spotify, I mean, comparing them, Spotify is a good service all around. It has a lot of nice features to it. Tidal, I think, has better quality music, but there's also, I mean, that's the drawback for me for Spotify, is that the quality of the music is pretty low. Tidal fixes that by having high quality music, but they also have other issues like, when you go from hi-fi, not every music they have, not all songs are in the hi-fi. So some of them drop to a lower class and then the volume just goes completely off. So one song could be hi-fi and the next one's not. And it just continually goes up and down, raising the volume, which is, I mean, it's just a product of the actual music, but it's the idea that that's kind of a pain. I didn't experience that on Qobuz though.
Well, I do listen on this phone. It's one of my phones I carry always around. So really, hi-fi wouldn't do much for it because this is €75 phone. It probably doesn't have good audio encoding.
Yep. Anybody want to jump in before we move on?
Yeah, this is a lifetime struggle, isn't it, Rocco?
It is, dude. Well,
why doesn't one app have everything you need? Why doesn't Linux distro have everything you need? Why doesn't Windows have everything you need? Why doesn't anything in life have everything you need?
It just doesn't.
Why is this a struggle that everything has little bits and pieces and you got to put it all together, but you can't?
No service is
The
perfect.
problem is that if we get a distro that does everything, then it'll be bloated and we'll have to go to something more lean, and then we'll be fragmented again.
Yeah, and by the way, Colin, you like to install a lot of extra software, so, if you're going to complain about that, why do we have to come with all this software? Then how about you install all of it for yourself? Oh, even better, you can just install the whole entire desktop, just taking that install ISO and go at your will if you want to be picky. And
well, we want to be picky. We're consumers, Joshua. That's the way it is.
Then let's compile our own kernels too.
And not be picky.
Gentle.
Yeah.
No,
so we install everything or nothing.
See, this is what happens. We go everything, and then we're like, nah, that won't work, and we instantly just send to Gen 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's great that we have all of these, like, say, the streaming services. I think it's great that we have all of them to choose from. But, like, for example, trying them out is no easy task because you got to get all of your songs that you listen to in that music service now and like all of them and add playlists and all this other stuff. So it's not a simple thing to just try a new service, but I like to try new things. So that's what I'm doing right now.
And first, you need to have that service available in your country. That's also a big concern.
Yeah.
Like it was for me with Spotify. It just got the service available in the middle of last week.
Yep.
That's why I just pick one service. Once I find a service that has most of what I need, I just stick with it and then just use that. I'm like, I'm not, going to bounce from this streaming service to that streaming service. Music's music. I'm not using anything that's going to be, as far as speakers or, these like studio speakers that are, $5,000 per speaker type setup. I'm just listening to music in a headphone most of the case or a Bluetooth soundbar. So I'm not looking for audiophile quality music anyway. I'm just putting it on the background when I'm doing stuff.
I don't really need the audio file high lossless super duper quality either, because I have my headphones on all the time on a computer. Okay, but it's like if you go and you get in your vehicle and you start playing Bluetooth and you start streaming music, then that affects how loud you can actually play it without it sounding like total garbage. So that is something to think about when you're picking a streaming service, that you want one that you could actually turn it up halfway and not have it sound bad. So.
Well, lucky for me, my car spends 99.9% of its life inside of a garage and doesn't get driven because I work from home, and so I don't have to commute.
Yep.
1, 2, with this COVID stuff, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay home. I'm not even gonna go out to the restaurants, even though they're open. There's no reason for me to go out and sit down and have some beers at the restaurant when I can just sit at home and stay safe and do it. So I don't go.
Jason, you are such a nerd, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good stuff.
When they said that you have to, there's like a stay-at-home order, I'm like, I'm a nerd. I'm prepared for this. I've been doing this most of my life.
So I think the reason that I personally go with Spotify is largely because of the device availability. Spotify is available not just on the phones, but it's also available on desktop for every operating system. It's available on multiple speakers like Sonos, the Google devices, the Alexa devices. Like, it's available all over the place, and it may not be the highest quality or any of those things, but it's got a really large library.
It does.
It's always a growing library at that. And it's available everywhere I want to listen to music, in my car, in the room, in the kitchen, wherever I am. Spotify's there.
Well, I think they're really on top of the new releases. Another thing, and 2, I think the only music that I have not been able to listen to on Spotify is like, if you search Garth Brooks music, you can't play some of the Garth Brooks music.
Yeah, he is nowhere to be found.
He's nowhere. That's it.
He was brilliant. He was brilliant in like the 80s when he was doing a lot of contracts. He actually had the forethought to think of digital rights for his music.
Right.
And so he basically is like the only person that's just like, nah, not happening. And it works for him.
So
yeah, it works for him. Hey,
I have a very good workable solution that doesn't cost me anything, and that's FM radio. It's free and generally has everything that I want to listen to.
Yes, but FM radio you can't skip. Nate, you can't skip the song.
And you can't pick a genre. You can pick a FM station that has a certain genre, but what I'm saying
tons
is
of ads.
you can't just say like, okay, I want to listen to this particular artist and things like it.
What's wrong with ads?
Commercials.
That's
commercials.
That's how I know like what's out there for me to buy. How am I supposed to figure out what I'm supposed to buy if I don't hear the ads?
Google.
Nate, that's what pop-up blockers are for. We don't like ads here. Okay.
I like entertaining ads. I'm always a fan of entertaining ads.
I actually don't even have a pop-up blocker on, so.
I don't either.
I actually spend the extra money for my CBS All Access, so I don't get the commercials.
Yep, I added that to Amazon Prime along with HBO, and then it's you got commercials on a bunch of different services.
I figure I save like 20 minutes on a 1-hour episode. It's worth it just for that.
Yeah, it's not so much.
When you're supposed to get up, go to the fridge and get some chocolate milk, in between acts. Otherwise, you have to hit pause. That's too much work.
But pause is better than commercial, because you could be in the middle of an action-packed scene. All of a sudden, something's about to happen. Poof, commercial.
Tough to get away when you're in the car.
True.
Yep.
So you can't just get out at the red light, because you got a commercial going on.
It depends what you're trying to get away from, Dan.
Oh, right. No. So I mean, yeah. So you can't skip the ads. You have ads, and you're in the car. You're captive. You're listening. You want to listen to music, right? I mean, that's what you came there for.
Well, you only have a certain amount of time, say, for your trip. So you want to listen to the music you want to listen to, and not 10 songs that you really don't care about. One song you like, and maybe a few ads on that trip. So,
but if you have Adam's car, you don't want to listen to music. You want to listen to the car.
Well, this is
and
true.
The,
Yeah, I just listen
and
to
the
radio right
exhaust and that
I just turned it on. I just
cylinder
turned the radio
love.
off and just
He probably can't hear the radio, Bill, when he rolls down
actually,
the
I have to
windows.
turn it up pretty loud to hear it.
What does he get, like what does he have? Like American muscle car or something?
Yeah, I have a
yes.
Dodge Charger RT Scat Pack. So
Oh, yep.
6.4 liters of American muscle. Just
Yeah,
saying.
it's awesome.
So in other words, you got a car with a real engine.
Yeah, and
it's a half
gas
of an engine. It's a
gas
Hemi.
tank meter that moves when you watch it.
Yeah, my brother has a Hemi in his truck, but it probably doesn't sound as well as inside of a car.
It's pretty great.
So I know it's not Linux related, but I just seen, and I know I'm late to the party, but I just seen the new 2020 Corvette. It came out in May, and it is absolutely awesome. Okay, back to Linux. I'm just saying, I just had to throw that in there because I thought it was pretty cool.
Hey, I bet that car runs Linux.
It has a huge infotainment section, center thingy console. Like it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I would love to see what's actually running underneath.
I mean, Rocco, you could get it and break it because you do.
Well, it starts at $60,000, Bill. So that's probably out of my price range.
What does it say that like you
It's
get some
probably
guy who
running.
goes to a car dealership and he's like, so what's in the infotainment system? Like, he doesn't care at all about like the nice big
running
V8,
He doesn't
nice
care about
wheels or anything. He's
the
just like,
495 horsepower in the car. He doesn't care about anything.
Yeah, he's
So
not a
this has
fan of the
CarPlay.
Jeremy
Run.
Clarkson group. I can tell you.
Yeah.
What operating system can I watch these movies on? I
Right.
need to know.
Absolutely.
All right, so I did get another comment, and I don't normally post comments to videos that I have made. I post a comment. I mean, I talk about comments here that are on Biddle, but there was one comment that was made on a old KDE video that I had made a few years back, and I just wanted to bring that up for a specific reason. So I believe it was Musta was the commenter, and he said, in 2020, this is yet the good solution in Kubuntu 2004. I tried so many tips and fixes, call it whatever you want, and this is the only one that worked for me and worked immediately. Now I will back a copy of this file, and if needed, it'll be ready for a future install of Kubuntu. And it was basically something that was just a problem that I had. Nobody else cared about. It was how to enable login, how to enable the numbers lock on login. Not on boot up, but, or I should say, not on login, but on boot up. So when you got to your password box, you could actually have the number locks on. And
You can do that because I actually need that now. I do that every time.
I have a KDE video
Should
on
be
that.
Got a video for
by
you.
your BIOS.
So it's not, and it says it's on in the BIOS, but it never works. And a lot of
SDDM changes it, so
Well, but you have to log in order for it to change. So there's a setting in KDE that you can set to put the number locks on. But that doesn't take effect till you actually log in. And this is more for at the login screen. And the reason I bring it up is because there's many guys that have said to me, well, I don't have video content, or I don't know what videos to post on my channel. And I always tell them, just post about things you care about. And that's exactly what this video is. Now, this video's probably only got, I think, 2,500 views. There's not a lot of views on this video, but it helped this guy, and that's made it all worth it. So if you have content that you want to make for your channel, make it. It doesn't matter if it's super professional. It doesn't matter if it's only going to help 2 or 3 people. If it helps somebody like this person, it's all worth it. And that's why I brought it up. So if you're thinking about making content, do it and make it like Eric Adams' channel. His content is the same stuff. It's about problems that he's encountered. They're very specific, and he makes a video and says, this is how I fixed it. And I guarantee you those will help people.
Hey, Rocco, why don't you link that video in the YouTube chat?
I'll have to find that. I wasn't prepared, Bill.
It's a good idea, though, Bill.
That's a very good idea. I will link that. But first, I want to get your thoughts on this week Jeremy Soller. He's a developer for System 76, and he made a tweet, and it was a poll, just a short one-line poll. It says, "Be honest, do you care about open source firmware?" And then it was a poll. So I will pose the question to you guys. Do you guys care about open source firmware?
Yes.
No.
I don't really have any interest in it, but do I think that one day it might be important? Possibly. I mean, if it's hardware, it's kind of weird to think of it as open source.
I really like the idea personally.
It depends on if, like, I don't think at the current time it's really important unless you're storing and creating confidential data on the machine. Otherwise, it's not really important for the average person these days. But I agree with Joshua. One day in the future, who knows?
I think we're closer to that than you realize. Having the open source firmware lets you audit that, or someone else that is a professional audit that, and know that there's no backdoors and whatnot in that. So I think it can help to protect your privacy.
While it is a cool idea, I do think it is quite a problem getting it to the manufacturers of that hardware that would use it firmware. That's first of all. Second of all, it is that really it wouldn't change a lot for me. Because again, like with Linux, we talked last week on Bill Europe, or it was 2 weeks ago, about the whole reading the source code of a project, and how we say that a lot of new users that you could have security because people read the of projects and stuff like that. But how much is that source code really read? So it's the same thing here. Will that firmware really be read by someone who know what he's doing, or someone that would actually care about? And that there we go to the same issue. It's a circle that either it will be read,
I think,
or not. It's like proprietary.
I think you make a good point, Big Pod. But the problem is, if you don't open source it, then you can never audit it, right? Nobody can.
Yeah, but if it's not audited, it's like it wouldn't be open. It really doesn't change anything.
Still, the possibility is there, and yeah, I don't know. I like the possibility.
Here's my issue.
On the other hand, you
My
open
issue
a possibility that the bad guy will audit it and find bugs and use them. So, in some ways, it's a security by obscurity.
But that's the same argument Microsoft and all those used to make about open source. It's like, oh, if it's open, then the bad guys can find out where all the security flaws are and hack into your systems.
It's always
my issue.
A balance between multiple factors. Now go on, Nate. You tell your own.
My issue is if the firmware is closed source, like many
Big
closed source
Daddy here.
things, it will eventually die. If it's open source, then it can live on longer and improve over time. I'm just thinking of some games like in the 90s that were open sourced. I'm thinking of Descent. Anybody play that? It
Love that
lives
game.
on and is improved over time. Like you can download it now. You still have to buy the levels, I guess. But it's improved over time, and so now the textures are better, the lighting is better, the effects are better, it runs better, runs on the OpenGL stack now. But had that never been open sourced, it would have died in the 90s, likely. And so I think that goes the same with drivers. You know, I don't know how many, like for instance, for a router, I like to use routers that have, or historically have used routers that had open source firmware, because then I could adjust it and change it to what I needed. And if I didn't have that option, I wouldn't even use those routers. I think those routers are garbage unless they're open source firmware, honestly. They run, they're like DWRT or OpenWRT. I think those are better than what the closed source equivalents are. So I would say open source firmware is good. I mean, maybe not, I don't care about my mouse if they update the firmware and that. Maybe I don't care as much. But things that are of great importance, like an edge device, that's where things become a little more important to me.
Well, a lot of people think of these devices as appliances, as tools, so that becomes even less of a problem. As for me, a router that I use, if I wanted a router that I really wanted to check on, I would probably build it myself, use something like pfSense or some other router OS on it, and not use the router I get from my ISP.
I'm sorry. Read the comments. Aris, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that security by obscurity is a myth that doesn't exist. I could take my Wi-Fi and hide it so nobody can join it, but people are still gonna find it if they're looking for it. And I think that's one of the big problems with Wi-Fi in general. The WPA, WPA2, those aren't open standards, and nobody who's a security researcher can go look into that. It's all security through obscurity. So that's I think that's a really bad thing. For we're all sharing this protocol, and it's not being audited because it's all hidden.
Vince.
Excuse my ignorance, but what are we asking here? Are we asking for hardware manufacturers to open source their firmware, or are we asking for the ability to have geniuses go into a device and make their own firmware and make that open source? Because, I mean, what would be the motivation for a manufacturer to open source their firmware if the firmware is like the layer of software that's closest to the hardware? Wouldn't a manufacturer want to keep that sort of intellectual property proprietary for their own benefits? What would be the motivation for them?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Vince, because this poll, 84.9% of people out of 404 votes, it looks like, said that they care about open source firmware. And his reply to that, or his tweak on that tweet was, so if yes, then why are you still buying Dells and Lenovo laptops? And I think that was his point about, if you care about open source firmware, you should support companies like System 76 who are trying to create open source firmware, or maybe put pressure on other people to open source their firmware.
I guess that would depend on whether the open source firmware is ready and available.
Yeah, agreed. I think they're on their way, and I don't know how complete that is. I'm not a technical geek, so I can't tell you that. But the tweet was more of a hidden message, basically. But I still think that the original question is valid. Is that something that we care about, open source firmware? Because we all talk about open source software. Would we ever get to the point, like you said, Vince? How many companies are actually going to just open source the stuff that's like that they've built, and so somebody else can copy it? And it's a hard situation to be in.
Well, I think it's already been.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, I think it's already been proven that some firmware has had leaks and whatnot back to, nation states or third-party companies or things like that, right? So that's the sort of thing that we want to avoid, I do believe. And I think it's a real problem. We just, it's not prevalent maybe, but it exists.
Bill?
One of the problems with the whole question, in my opinion, is what he said is, why are you still buying Dells and Lenovo's? And as several people pointed out, that there is a level, and I'm not trying to knock on System 76, but there's a level of support and build quality that you're going to get. You have keyboards, and ThinkPads are well known for their keyboards and the nipple, and you have a whole level of stuff. And what are you getting on the current open firmware? If you compare what the open firmware allows you to do today, it's not equivalent So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and I think his question, the way he answered it, was a little bit wrong. I think people really do care. I think the poll shows that people care, but you need to have equivalence. And it would be great to see Dell and Lenovo do these things. And you're seeing a lot of stuff with Lenovo in their Fedora partnership and Ubuntu partnership. But we're walking down a line where with ARM, you're having more proprietary stuff than ever. And so you're seeing a little bit more openness in Intel, but on the ARM side, everything is proprietary to each chip manufacturer that's making the pies, the new Apple Silicon, even into Pine stuff, there's proprietary stuff there. And that's where we're going. Whether you like it or not, we're going ARM. The world is going ARM. And you have to have equivalents. Linux has a great equivalent to Windows today. But your firmware has to be equivalent, and the hardware it's on has to be equivalent to have a real, true discussion. Otherwise, you're just tilting at windmills.
Well, I think his question, you are correct, Bill, that you have to have equivalence. But I think his question may be coming from the underdog in the fight, trying to get more people on board with more than just saying they want open source firmware, and then instead of just saying that, to putting your money where, yes, I really do care about open source firmware. And in the same way that we as Linux users would kind of not take second-rate applications, but we will give up certain things to run an open source application. So we'll give up certain features or things that might make it easier for us to use open source software. And in the same way, I think he was trying to put across that if we really want open source firmware, then we should do the same idea when thinking about buying a laptop. So you are correct, but I think he was coming at it from a different angle. That's my take on it anyway. Anybody else have anything they want to add to that?
I think I don't remember the logical fallacy, but that's if you care about this, then why are you doing that? I think it was a bit there's a bit of an error in his reasoning. I don't remember which one it is. The logic fallacy escapes me. But I think that you can't. It's not a very fair argument. It's like, well, why? I mean, there may be more than just one reason that I'm buying a Dell. It could be that I have
there better
to a
be
company that, yeah, I have some loyalty to a company that's been building great machines that I've been using for years and years and years and years, and have held up. There's reasons why I do that, and for me, System 76, may be great. I don't know. I haven't had one, but when I price them out, it's like, well, I think I'm gonna go with this slightly older Dell here because I know it's gonna hold up, or whatever. But I think I should try System 76 laptop at some point in time. But do they have those cool dock stations? I don't know.
Nate, to cocaine.
Yes.
That's the fallacy name. It's Latin.
I'll look it up. Thank you.
Leo and Eric made it. What's happening?
Hey, what's happening?
Hey.
You guys want to get in on any of this conversation?
I missed the beginning of it, but I know we're hating on some laptops, though. So I want to get into some of that.
No, I had brought up the fact that Jeremy Saller from System 76 had tweeted out a poll that said, be honest, do you care about open source firmware? And 84% of people said yes. And then his next tweet was, if yes, then why are you still buying Dells and Lenovo's?
Yeah. I feel like the same with open source software, man. I got to be pragmatic about it. I've got to be able to make the stuff work. If the open firmware is gonna, take away a bunch of my ability to be able to, I don't know, use the camera or use the Wi-Fi or whatever proprietariness there is in that, then I will want to do it, but I will not be able to do it if I want to be able to get work done. So I want it. I really, really do. But yeah, if it's going to remove my ability, I can't do it.
it's not important enough to me to make a purchase decision based on whether or not the firmware is open. That's just what it comes down to.
I'll agree with that.
If it happens to have it, great. I'm not going to say, oh, gee, I don't want that. But at the same time, I'm not going to just say, well, that's the most important thing to me. And I know there are buyers out there that do say that, and great. They're there to fill a need. And, you know, I would love to try a System 76 device at some point, but it just hasn't come up in the buying cycle that I've had. And maybe next time I will.
Well, there's so many variables when you're picking out a machine. It's not just one thing, like you guys said. It's how the company that you're buying it from, the hardware itself, like specifically like with the ThinkPads, the keyboards and everything that goes with that. And then there's price, and then there's, you know, upgrades and everything. It's not just a simple, let's go buy a laptop process. So, Steve, how are you, sir? You have not been here for a while, brother. What's going on?
Oh, I had to join so I could get some sort of Linux slug experience. Actually, I tried a new distro while I was on vacation for a week with my family.
What did you try?
Believe it or not, I have never tried MX Linux, and I installed it on a machine and used it for a whole week while I was on vacation.
Wait, you never tried MX before?
Never on a actual hardware. I think I maybe ran a live USB a couple times, but that's the extent of it for a few minutes. Which, think about this, shame on me, since my teenage son is one of their co-contributors.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And
And
my son was having a great time all vacation, saying, well, Dad, you got to check out this. Dad, you got to check out this. Because he was working on code for MX while he was on vacation.
Well, what did you think?
Actually, shame on me. I really should have tried it a long time ago.
Yeah,
I think I finally figured out why, you know, what makes it so special. It truly is a user community driven distribution. So much of what they do is about scratching their own itch. The most active members of their community are really creating tools and workflows and other things. And one of the things that the reason I installed it to begin with is because they came out with that new Fluxbox edition. And it's installed automatically as one of the default desktops in 19.2. And I've always been a big fan of Fluxbox from back in early 2000s when I started running Linux. That was my favorite window manager of choice. And so I was having a great time all week just configuring Fluxbox again and living in Fluxbox. And they have a unique take on Fluxbox, that's for sure, in MX, because it's scratching their own itch. It's pretty cool.
Yep. MX is really cool. The MX tools alone are enough to sell you on it. So,
well, and those are unique, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't see half of the tools that they make that are all user driven, user focused, community driven, community focused. You don't see those in the other distros, and so many of them are like the tool that my son works on. You know, it's all about making something that you would maybe do in the command line with a bunch of configuration files, turning it into a GUI that you can work your way through, which makes some of their tools a little eclectic, I would admit, but pretty amazing.
Yep.
Hey, Rocco, you know that MX has this beta that's coming out? Apparently there's
Are you trying to
KDE.
talk me into doing another distro when we said we weren't going to do another distro for a while?
I'm not trying to talk you in. I'm just mentioning that MX Linux, who has now hardware that's branded with their logo, also has a beta, a KDE beta. I think it's beta 2 actually. And to go with what Mo was saying, they are such a great community. Their community is great, and you can actually, another one, just like with a lot of the other distros, you can actually get a developer to answer questions, and that's amazing. Dolphin is so out there in the community.
Well, I was going to say it helps when Dolphin's your lead. So
yeah, and he's got a lot of great videos, and you know, I think that helps a lot. You know, foster the community and help all the users stay informed.
Yep.
their forum is ridiculous. There are hundreds of posts in that forum. I mean, you look at the newest posts, and I think it shows like 10 at a time. That changes like every couple minutes. It cycles through to get new posts. It's unbelievable how active their forum is.
Yep. Well, I did post a link in the YouTube chat for the KDE video and also Jeremy's tweet if you want to go reply to that and put your 2 cents into it. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about before we head on to the continuation of the apps?
Well, we mentioned MX, so I'll take a moment here and say that Debian Stretch just released their last update, so 9.13. That's going to be their
what do
last.
you mean? What do you mean by last update, Dan?
Kind of think of it like 2004.1, 2, 3, and on, for the LTSs that they have. So they have these snapshots and updates and whatnot, and this is going to be their last one, and you need to move on to Buster 10 whatever. They're advising folks to move since this will be their last update on Debian Stretch.
So what distros get affected by that?
I don't know. I think most of the Debian ones probably have moved on to Buster anyway. But if you were just running straight up Debian.
What is MX on?
Well, yeah, they're on Buster.
Okay.
I think that the latest versions are on Buster. But I think MX 17 was probably the last Debian Stretch.
So pretty much every other distro would be. So the only people that would be worried about that are the people that are actually just running plain Debian.
Could be, or if, like I said, if you were running one of the earlier spins and you hadn't upgraded, then you probably should.
Yeah.
I wanted to one more thing on MX. So they have the KDE beta out there, which is pretty excellent. And because they give you the custom ISO tool, when I was going to fix my aunt's computer, I thought, you know what, I better have a Linux distro on a USB key just in case, things go awry. And so I thought, what could I do? So I booted into the beta, I set it up the way I wanted it, and then I did the custom snapshot, which lets you create your own ISO, and then I put that on a USB key, and it was fantastic. So MX has those quality of life tools that, how many normal users are going to spin their own ISO? Maybe not that many, but for people that are doing power user kind of stuff or IT stuff, I think MX is pretty amazing with that kind of thing.
Yep, agreed.
One more thing before we leave, Rocco. I want to just jump on what Dan said about things getting support ending. So this week, Ubuntu 19.10 ended security and update support. So if for some reason somebody that's listening to this or watching this or whatever is crazy enough to still be running 19.10, please update. That's all.
That is all. That's your friendly PSA. All right. I guess we're going to jump in. If you guys have anything else, feel free.
I bought a new GPU.
What'd you buy?
RX 5700 XT.
My man.
So why did
AMD
you
card? Yeah.
Why did you go out and buy that?
Because he loves Mesa.
The main
because
the
he
main
has a
reason was
Dodge now.
actually my nephew is building a gaming PC, and he doesn't have very much money because his mom's a teacher, and so I was like, well, I kind of want to try some AMD stuff, so I bought the AMD card, and I'm going to give him my 1080 Ti.
That's awesome.
So that was the main reason, was to just kind of help out with his build. But I've enjoyed AMD actually on both Windows and Linux, and it's surprisingly good. I know the Navi cards had a lot of problems initially, but those all seem to be ironed out by now. I was actually using Sway, which is the Wayland Compositor i3, and they actually have multiple monitor FreeSync support in Sway, and it works astoundingly well. So that was pretty neat.
And FreeSync is the open implementation of the NVIDIA Sync thing where it keeps your monitor.
No, it's a separate thing from G-Sync, but it's a similar concept there where it syncs up the frame rate of the game with the refresh rate of the monitor. So there's no jutter or stuttering or anything, no tearing, none of that. So they actually have that on Sway, which is pretty nice. And I read that GNOME was working on that with their Wayland compositor as well.
So have you looked at any like what are the differences in performance from that? What was it, a 1080?
1080 Ti.
Yeah, compared to
pretty close. It's not quite the 1080 Ti, but it's pretty close. And I don't know, it's a nice card. It uses a heck of a lot less power than the 1080 Ti did. That 1080 Ti, I would regularly be up in the 250 watt range when I'm playing a game, and this one sits around in like the 130 watt range.
That's something I never looked at when I played a game, is the wattage.
Yeah, I pay the electric bill, so.
Yeah, that's just true.
Yeah.
So is that something you can see in the NVIDIA settings or what?
That was actually something I saw in the Radeon settings, and yeah, in the NVIDIA stuff, it was the MSI Afterburner I think I was using.
Oh, okay.
The Riva tuner thing that comes with that. Yeah, it was in Windows that I saw these numbers, but yeah, I mean, I'm pretty astounded by the performance and everything that I got out of it, and I'm using it on 1440p high refresh rate monitors, so works just fine.
Very nice, very nice. Well, I'm
and
sure
I wanted to thank. Hey, sorry, Rocco.
Go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to thank Adam. So when he was telling me he got it, I asked him to do a little bit of testing for Ubuntu Mate on it, and he was willing to do that because we don't have that super high-end AMD GPU to test. So I just wanted to thank him for doing that for us.
Anytime, man. Glad to help.
Well, that's actually what I was going to say. I'm sure your nephew will appreciate that video card. So that was awesome of you.
Yeah, he will.
All right, I think we're going to jump into the app section. If you weren't here last week, OMG Ubuntu had a article, and I don't know the original date that it came out. It was updated in July, but it's an essential guide, 21 must-have apps for Ubuntu 2020 edition. And we have been going through the list and looking at these apps, and we got through, I think, email, music players, and web browsers, basically, in the last show. So I'm going to put a link in the YouTube chat, and you can follow along as we dive into this. But the next up, and some of these coming up are going to be very specific, so not everybody will be into this. Like, for example, the next one on the list is GIMP. So it's basically a viable Photoshop alternative, depending on who you talk to. Open source. Yeah, Crit is there too. But GIMP is listed as a must-have app. And like I said, so if you're not into manipulating photos or, creating logos, you might not care about GIMP. But and some of the other apps may be that same way, but we are going to go through them. So GIMP, is this something that you guys must have? Do you care about it, or is there something else that you use instead of it? Big Pod, go ahead.
Well, I do use GIMP for editing stuff and pictures and stuff like that, and it is okay, but especially when I had to run GIMP and Photoshop in the same day, I got to see the difference. And GIMP is for sure not a viable replacement or viable alternative for Photoshop. It is ways behind. So,
well, I will say in certain areas it is behind. It's just now starting to come up with the non-destructive stuff, and there are certain things that are lacking. But for being an alternative where, unless you need specific Photoshop features, is it worth booting into Windows to use Photoshop, or doing a VM, or trying to get Photoshop to run in some other way?
Well, for me, it was just the ease of use. I don't know, but Photoshop was so much more nice to use. I I got I understood how it works really quickly, and everything I worked with was nice to use. Where in GIMP, even though I used it for quite a while now, I still get lost really quickly. Using the same features I did use in Photoshop when I did while I was at school doing stuff.
Now, is that Big Pod maybe because you're not unfamiliar with GIMP, or that just the features aren't there at all in GIMP?
Well, that was the first time I was using Photoshop, and I didn't get lost. So that is quite a big plus compared to games that I'm using it on and off for 5 years, 5 to 6 years, and it hasn't changed a lot. So, yeah.
I'm going to just jump in and say that I think GIMP is a valuable piece of open source software. It's not as feature complete or on feature parity with something like Photoshop. And there's definitely some major differences in the way it handles things like destructive editing. Anyone that's an actual graphic designer can give a much better account of this than I will. But the fact that it's available, that they continue to develop it, that I can go in and do the basic things that I need to do with web graphics and things like that, they continue to improve it. It's one of those stalwart open source applications. And I mean, it's a huge benefit to everyone that it exists. And I don't think anyone, and maybe not even they themselves, look at, do they really want to go head to head with something like Photoshop? You know, I don't think that's really what they're trying to do. But if they are, then, you know, okay, then I think that would be a fair comparison. But for most people who just need to do basic, straightforward things, and even some more intermediate stuff, it does work. It's certainly not as robust and feature complete as Photoshop. And I will just throw out there as an alternative, Photopea, PHOTOPEA, is a browser-based raster image editor, and it has a lot of Photoshop-like features, and is a really, really excellent photo editor. So I will use GIMP for just simple things, resizing, you know, cropping, just things like that, you know, changing formats. But if I need to actually edit a raster graphic, then I'll use Photopea, and it works really, really well. So,
all right.
I can't say I use it a whole lot. Sorry, I can't say I use it a whole lot, but I've been using it to make thumbnails for YouTube and doing some basic stuff for Mintcast. And I mean, I'm no pro. There's absolutely no way that I would be any kind of pro or anything like that. But GIMP definitely gets everything I need done. So if it were to go away, I'd be really, really sad. I've learned some hotkeys. I've learned just kind of the way that GIMP works. So, you know, what is the other one? The one that super Photoshop style, Glimpse. If they would be able to carry on, I'd be happy. But overall, if they went away, I would not be a happy camper, at least for a little while, until I figured something else out. Photopea may be the next thing.
Well, Donald McManus, Donald, I'm sorry for butchering your name, McCunnis, says, I hear that the workflows are very different between Photoshop and GIMP, so switching between the two is not so easy. I have no experience in Photoshop, so I can't say, but I have heard the same exact thing from people who have used both.
I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but if you did try to switch and had, like Wendy mentioned, that if she has PSD files, Photoshop files, Photopea does open those natively and support all of the layering and filters and all of that stuff. And that's, I think, in a lot of cases, when I start to do something more complicated, where GIMP falls down is the way that it handles layering and masks, and it's just so much easier in something that's more of a Photoshop-esque thing. Like, so Photopea does that all very, very well. And so if you're familiar with Photoshop and you need an alternative, I think, again, I have no interest. There's nothing making me tell you about Photopea other than I use it and I enjoy it. So
I put a link in the chat for it.
Yeah, sounds pretty handy.
I have to say, GIMP for me is a must-have. I do a lot of my thumbnails for my YouTube videos in GIMP, and I was never a image manipulation person anyway. Never used any of the applications available on Windows or anything, so I came in pretty fresh. So I didn't have a mindset from anything else. So I just, watched a few videos and that on how to use GIMP. And I find it quite easy to do the simple things. So it works for me. So I like it. It's a must-have for me anyway. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think if you don't know the difference, right, Colin? I mean, if you don't use Photoshop and you just kind of learn how GIMP works, it's more than adequate and capable for doing thumbnails and, other raster graphics.
Yep. I mean, I've actually used it to cut images out so you can put them on different backgrounds. So that's quite interesting to do that. And it can be time consuming, but it's actually quite rewarding with some of the things you can come up with. So, I find that quite interesting to do.
The larger problem that people run into is if you were to just take someone who's a graphic artist now, who more or less, if you're a graphic artist, graphic designer, you're held hostage by Adobe because the industry assumes that you're using Adobe's products. That's just the way it is, right? So my wife is a graphic designer, graphic artist, and she uses CorelDRAW because she does, and she uses it because that's what she wants to use, but she runs into constant friction around working with other people because they all use Adobe, because it's just the industry standard. So I could see if someone was trying to switch to Linux and was like, well, that's impossible because I can't use Adobe. And I have to agree with them in a lot of respects because it just is what people expect you to use. And if you say you don't, then that's a pain point.
Yeah, that's
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Computer Kid, go right ahead.
So I came to Linux from Windows 7, where I had used whatever that Paint app is called. It might just be called Paint or something. But I needed an alternative, and I couldn't really find one. GIMP basically just drowned me, and I wanted to find something that would just allow me to do simple stuff like cropping, maybe cut out a background every once in a while, and adding text, changing colors, stuff like that. And I felt that Krita was a very good fit for that. It has different views you can put it in, and the default view is quite simple. Like, you've just got all your different tools down the side, and then a menu for your specific tool down the other side, and the picture in the middle. And then there's more complicated views if you want to do something like that look a bit more like GIMP. They're a bit more complicated. So that's what I use. And I use it quite a lot for just basic stuff like that.
That's good. And I think having the layout switch, or having the different basic and then more advanced way to go about it, I think that's a good approach, and it'd be great if more things implemented that.
It even has an animation view where you can like make GIFs, I think.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Cool. Anybody else want to jump in on the whole area of photo editing? All right, moving on to the next must-have app, number 5, is Kdenlive Video Editor. Again, this might not pertain to everybody. Not everybody in here is editing videos, but there are quite a few in here that do. And Kdenlive is is the best open source alternative, I think. I don't use it because I think I have a better alternative than Kdenlive, but I do believe that it is the best open source one. So what do you guys all think?
I might go first on that one, Rocco. I was using Kdenlive for quite a long time, and I did get to the point where I just could not get audio and video to sync. And I think we've spoken about this before. Some people do the audio differently, but I don't like to do it that way. I just like to keep it simple on simple screen recorder. But I haven't been back to visit Kdenlive for quite a while because I'm using Blender instead. But I don't know if they've fixed that issue. I did actually go to their. I filed a bug for it, or there was somebody had a bug in there, and I put my 2 cents worth in. So I haven't really been back to revisit that. But besides that little issue I was having, which can be a nightmare when you can't line up with the waveform, it can be a real issue to edit video when you can't find the correct spacing for the waveform. That can be annoying. But besides that, it is a great video editor, besides that little issue I was having there.
Well, my personal experience with Kdenlive is that I used it ever since not ever since starting in my videos. I tried all of the other ones, but yeah, I don't know exactly when I started using Kdenlive, but it was very early, and it worked not perfectly. It worked good enough for me to get my videos done. Now, I had no experience in any of the proprietary editors. So I had no background to say, oh, I'm losing this feature or I don't have this feature. All I knew was the open source ones, and all I knew was Kdenlive. Once I got more info on what could actually be done with some of the video editors, I felt it was necessary to move on to DaVinci Resolve. That does work on Linux. Not exactly open source, but it does work on Linux, and it is absolutely amazing in feature set. It can't be compared to with Kdenlive.
I think what I ran into, Rocco, was kind of the same thing you did, right? When you were making pretty simple videos, like you're just cutting clips and combining things, throwing in some audio, some music, I would say any of the open source editors are completely capable of doing that. OpenShot, and I was using Olive for quite a while, and even in its alpha state, it's good. As soon as I tried to do, transparency with titles and transitions and a lot of different things, it became challenging. And that was for a few different reasons. One, stability was an issue on many of those, including Kdenlive in particular. And two, just the way the UIs were built, right? The tool sets themselves. You could do it, but it took an extraordinary amount of effort to do properly, and then repeating that effort to do it multiple times or in different videos became just such a cumbersome process that it was taking me hours to edit, a 10-minute video. And I thought, okay, I love open source and I want to support these projects. I also put in bugs and suggestions and things, and hopefully they will get there. All of them continue to be developed actively and are showing signs of continuing to progress. But just like Rocco, eventually I said, I have to be more efficient about this, and I need a better process because I can't spend 6 hours making every video. I just can't do it. And that leads you to the whole proprietary versus open source. And hopefully these things get there, but ultimately I did the same thing, and I settled on DaVinci, and it's because it's a complete product that just works and lets me get my things done. So,
well, not only is it more stable for me than Kdenlive was. I've been with Kdenlive for a long time, so there was years of headaches of crashing and all kinds of different things. Plus, the more things that you add to that video, the more transitions, the more effects, the more whatever, it would double, triple the render time to that video. And just the GPU rendering alone with DaVinci Resolve is worth it. When I can render a video out in 15 minutes, that's 2 hours long, that would take 4 hours to render probably in Kdenlive. I mean, there's no contest. Computer Kid, go ahead.
So I'm definitely not a pro on this topic, but I have tried to play around with videos a few times, and I don't understand the process well enough that when I go into something like Kdenlive, I'm just immediately drowned with buttons. It's like GIMP, but for video. And then I've started using OpenShot, but I have weird issues where during the render, I'll have parts of the video that just, I don't know how to explain it, but the audio just gets really bad and the video freezes up and stuff. So it's the best that I have found so far, but I have found some weird issues with it.
Gotcha. I've used OpenShot before, and it's not, I had to make a quick video or something, and I just installed that, and it worked. But anyway, Big Pod, go ahead.
Well, I use Kdenlive, but if I go like all the way back, I did use Premiere Pro for a while. I did use DaVinci Resolve, and well, all of them, Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve were far better than Kdenlive, in my opinion. But with DaVinci Resolve, I have this annoying problem on Linux, which isn't present on Windows. It isn't even getting to work on Linux is a problem if you're not on CentOS or Fedora or RHEL based distro. And I got it running once on one install, so that was a no-go for me since I wanted to do my full production on Linux. That's why I stayed on Kdenlive. But if I would just for editing the video switch to Windows, I would definitely use Resolve because it's just better than Kdenlive.
So to Computer Kid's point, though, I mean, it is overwhelming. If it's the subject, I mean, image editing is very similar as well, right? If it's something you're not familiar with, you jump into some of these editors and it's just like, whoa, what am I looking at here? All I want to do is clip a video together and maybe throw a title on it, and good Lord, and I would say that many of them do a good job of that. And there are different classes and categories just with image editors, right? You have very simple ones that are task oriented. I just want to do these things very simply, very quickly. And then you have ones that are just every bell and whistle. And one of the things we didn't mention with Kdenlive is scripts. So you can script it to do things. And someone like Michael, right, from Tux Digital, he's doing things with timestamps, with scripting, with being able to do cuts and edits. And there's a lot of extensibility in Kdenlive that if you have a process set up, that it does simplify things. So I certainly don't want to disparage or take away from Kdenlive and by any stretch. Same thing with GIMP, right? I mean, you can compare an open source project with a handful of developers to a commercial product, and it's never a fair fight. And so,
well, think about it now. All the code and time that goes into Kdenlive, a video editor is such a complex program. It's not just a simple app. There's so much that goes into it. It's amazing what they're able to do with Kdenlive as it is right now. But the other thing you mentioned, Eric, and Computer Kid as well, trying to find how to do your workflow in other video programs is not easy. When I was searching through these programs, like you have to completely switch your workflow. And that can be very frustrating as it is, and you're trying to get something to work, and all of a sudden this program crashes. And it almost leads you to not giving it a full-blown chance, a full-blown opportunity in your mind, because it's already a frustrating process. And you have to commit. Like, if you're going to switch to something, you have to commit to it and say, I'm going to start using it. You can't just half-heartedly try it, or you won't give it that effort. And it'll be even a more frustrating process than it already is.
So I give I give props to Colin. I'm sorry. I give props to Colin I tried learning Blender. Blender's one of those things you look at and it's exactly like that, where it's like overkill.
Yep.
How can I possibly come to terms with this UI? It's just so complicated, but they've made some strides there. And I do look for them to maybe, do something really interesting in the future. Lightworks was another one I tried. And you talk about workflow, like Lightworks is so strange.
Dude, I was just going to bring that up. There's a lot of people that love Lightworks. Like I know Ryan likes Lightworks. I know Jason Evangelo, he loves Lightworks. But it has such a different workflow, man. I was trying it out, and I actually purchased it and tried it out. And man, is it difficult to wrap your head around, as far as if you're used to the if you're used to the standard way of editing a video, and then trying to wrap your head around what Lightworks is asking you to do is not a simple process. So,
yeah, I'll bring up Oh, go ahead, Colin.
No, you can go if you like.
No, go ahead.
All right. I was going to say it was Ryan that got me onto Blender, because he made a video on Blender, and I thought, yeah, I think I could use that. And like you said, Rocco, you've got to commit to it, right? And I committed to Blender, and yeah, it's a bit more manual in the way you do things, but one of the things I liked about it was, I think I've said once before, it never used to crash, but with the latest Blender, oh boy, I can crash it just like that if I want to. Just a simple, if you do more than one copy and paste, bang, it's gone. So they've updated it, so things have changed a little bit, and I've found myself recently just trying to sort of relearn a few things. So this is what happens with updates as well, and this is what happens when you run a Arch distro.
Well, Colin, you say about crashing on command. I mean, it used to be, I don't know, I haven't used it in a while, but it used to be I could crash Kdenlive live on command. All you have to do is more than 3 undos with your keyboard.
Right.
You do Control-Z more than 3 times, boom, it's gone. I mean, it's dead. So, yeah, but geez, Blender is so different though, Colin. But you get the plus side of, if you get used to it like you did, you could also get used to the other parts of Blender, and that is such a powerful program.
Yeah, I haven't really looked into that, but what I do like about Blender is I'd had trouble sort of trying to work out how to do picture-in-picture in Kdenlive, but in Blender, it's quite easy to do. So, it has its pluses as well, so you can really add some things and do different things that I've learned to do, and I've learned so much more since I've started using it. It's just amazing, and sometimes on videos I've learned, and sometimes I just come across it accidentally. And you did something, you went, oh, how did I do that? You look into it more, and you find, oh, geez, that's handy, So it has its pros and cons, just like everything else, I suppose.
Well, Rocco, to your point, the time investment, right? If you invest in a platform, is it going to grow with you? And I certainly think Blender is one of those things. And that was what I looked at. I thought, wow, if I could figure out how to do the 3D titling and some of those effects and transitions, like the sky's the limit in a system like that if you take the time to learn it. But it is a huge investment, right?
It is, dude. It really is. Look, editing video itself is a huge investment, period. You can spend double, triple the time of the length of the video editing it, because it's, I
don't think people realize that, right? I mean, what does it take you to do just a normal Linux Spotlight episode?
I don't think I've timed it out, but I'm going to say, say the last one. I probably spent 10 hours total on that last episode of Linux Spotlight with Eric, the IT guy.
And that's just editing. That's not the recording and
that's just the editing process. That's not the scheduling of the Linux Spotlight. That's not the sitting down, doing the research on, what the person is into and formulating some good questions and then actually having the interview. And that's just the editing process. And there are hundreds of edits in there, not because of anything other than taking out space, taking out costs, taking out, everything that goes along with it. It's I'm not complaining. I'm definitely not complaining. I enjoy doing it, but there is a lot of time involved in that. And when you're, sometimes you feel bad because you're not. Well, I don't really feel bad, but you can try to be made to feel bad because you're not using the open source alternative. You're using the proprietary software. But to be honest with you, I don't feel bad at all about it because I know what that program does for me.
So interesting. Me and Dan keep talking.
I know.
You can go now, Dan.
Oh, well, I'm just going to say that DJ brings up a good point, and it segues right into this. He says, never switch your workflow. Always switch the app. So if that's working for you, then that's the way you should probably, work it.
Yeah.
Got to be pragmatic about it sometime.
When you're trying to make it and you're trying to make it sound its best and look its best, and this is what Kdenlive couldn't help me with. There are times in Linux Spotlight where there are transitions that nobody sees because DaVinci Resolve is so good at editing video and making smooth transitions to where you don't even know there's a cut there, but there is a cut there. There's other times you can see it. Just the way it is. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's so drastic, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. But it's a powerful program.
I was going to say, Rocco, 10 hours is on DaVinci Resolve. I could only imagine how long that would take if you was on something like Kdenlive. It'd probably be twice as long, would it?
Well, here's the thing, Colin. 10 hours for the editing process of it, but then the render time is 15 minutes. Where Kdenlive would add another 2, 3, 4 hours onto that. So, yeah.
Nice.
15 minutes is pretty good, I must say. Yeah,
that's super fast.
Yep,
absolutely.
All right, Daniel wants to get in on this. He's got his hand up.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I just wanted to do. If anybody who's seen any of my videos knows that I'm so not looking to win any kind of awards or accolades. Like, I'm looking to put out a video and do the least amount of work that I can around it. Get out the information, but I did find that I was using OpenShot for a while, which was okay. But Eric Adams did this. I think it was actually a live stream that he put out, and it was quite lengthy one on Olive, and that actually got me to switch over to that. So that's what I've been using, and it's been working good for me. But I don't do nearly the sophisticated stuff that you guys are doing with transitions and all that. Like I said, I'm trying to keep talk about workflow. I'm trying to keep my workflow on videos to as minimum as possible because I just don't have the time to put into it at this point. But that video that Eric put out on Olive was really good and helped me a lot. So that's what I've been using.
Yeah, Olive is so straight. I mean, to me, it's intuitive. So back to Computer Kid's point about like, what am I looking at? I think Olive strikes that balance of the tools are there, and most of them are manual. A lot of the things I was doing was keyframes, time coding, where you say, okay, I'm going to start at this point and then bring in a transition or a fade or something. It's really, really good at that, and it's very stable. But when you start getting into more, elaborate things, that's kind of where it falls down. Now, they've been working on it feverishly for months, and they're doing something that looks a lot like there's a bit in DaVinci with the Rocco, I forget what it's called, where the nodes where you can kind of put things together. Yeah, so it's something like that where everything's going to be like in Blender is very similar as well, where everything's kind of like a node and then you hook them together, and that's how you wire together and jack audio is kind of like that as well, where things, there's an in and an out, and the way you put those together is how you achieve the effect. And so I'm hoping that they come up with something good, but again, it's like one guy,
right.
And what time he has to invest in it and how far along it gets. So.
Well, that's the other thing with DaVinci Resolve. Now, I mean, some people might not care about what I'm going to mention, but Eric, I mean, you've edited podcasts, so when you want to like start a video out with music, and then you put a keyframe there to lower it to a certain volume, and then you put another key. You add keyframes to lower and raise it as you go along. And in DaVinci Resolve, I just found out that there's an easier way to do that, where if you cut the volume where you want it to be, or cut the audio track where you want it to be, you can actually put a transition in there, and I forget what it's called right at this moment. But once you put that transition there, you can move that keyframe wherever you want on the timeline. So as you're editing, if that moves, you can just grab that one spot and move it over, and then just add another one later, where when you're editing keyframes, you're dragging one over and then it slightly goes up and the volume goes up or down, and then you got to go in and make sure it's right, and then move one over again. And there are so many tricks with DaVinci Resolve and there's so many different ways that you can handle each particular problem. On top of that, you have the built-in transitions that it has, but it also, they have companies out there that are creating simple drag and drop transitions that you can purchase if you want to go that route, where if you don't want to sit there in Fusion and create a specific transition, they will give you pay a certain amount of money and they will give you a pack of whatever 100 different transitions, whether they're zooming in and out or spinning or whatever it may be. And that's kind of like, I guess, the power of DaVinci Resolve.
And that goes back to your point about a tool that's going to grow with you, right? All those capabilities are there. And I feel the same way. I've only made a handful of videos in DaVinci. I haven't been making videos recently, but I just got the sense that, okay, I am barely scratching the surface of what's possible,
Well, if you're into video editing and you're not opposed to trying out DaVinci Resolve, you don't even need to try it out. Just go to their website, Black Magic Design, I think it is, and they have a tutorial, and I think it's a 30 or 40 minute video, and it's just starting to edit with DaVinci Resolve. I think that's what the title is. It is, and it will show you. It will go through a whole list, and they will go step by step and show you what DaVinci Resolve is capable of. And that's when I purchased it, because as soon as I watched that video, spent the 40 minutes watching it, I was sold on this is what I want to go with, because these are the features that I want to have available.
Yeah. And there's also some really, really good channels out there on YouTube in terms of people who use it professionally and how they, use it, and tips and tricks. And anyway, if you're, use the open source stuff, try it, use it. If you can use it for simple projects, give the developers feedback. They're all getting better. They're all under heavy development all the time. But let's just look at the use case of, if you've gone beyond that, then there are other products out there that do run very well on Linux, which I give them credit for.
Yep. All right. Anybody else want to jump in on the video editing? All right.
I like Kdenlive. I think it's great.
So would you consider anything other than Kdenlive, Nate? Like, would you consider a proprietary software?
So when I started my journey in video editing, it was on VCRs with a transition thing, going from like computer and VCR source to another VCR.
Why does that not shock me, Nate?
Anything better than that, I think is. I was like the only kid in the 90s doing video editing, and then I just kind of didn't do it, on my Commodore Amiga. I'd create animations, and anyway.
Well, okay,
Disney
so
Animation Studio is pretty great.
I know I'm going off the rails here, but I have a question for you guys. We're going to stop with the apps for tonight. We'll continue on later. We only got 2 in, but that's just the way it is, because we're going to run out of time. But if you guys have any suggestions on, I have a box of the small, I don't even know what they're called. They're the small, thick tapes, VCR. They're not VCR tapes, but you would put them in an adapter for a VCR, and then you could put it into a VCR.
It's probably VHS-C or something like that.
Yes, I think it is, Dan.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I have, like, I don't know, 10, 12 from years ago, and they're just sitting there, and they're probably going to go bad because they're so old.
It'll be fine for a while.
Is there any...
Like vinyl.
What would be my cheapest route or the best route to transfer them to digital? Best route, whatever.
Can you get like what kind of connections does the player have?
Well, I don't have the player. All I have are the tapes. It was a JVC, I think, a camcorder that they were recorded on. I don't even have a VCR anymore, dude. I mean, who has VCRs? I mean,
yeah. My first thought was I just bought a capture card for $60. You don't even have to buy that because whatever you got on VHS is not going to be like 1080p. So
right.
Like 480 maybe.
Yep.
You can get one of those kind of capture cards for maybe $20-$30, and then you can buy a VCR or whatever the kind of player it is for that on eBay for maybe another $20, as long as it's not crazy proprietary and they're not trying to, pull one over on you.
And then hook the VCR to the capture card.
Yeah.
Yep. And then just OBS, boom, done.
Gotta be real time.
That's exactly what my brother does. He just started doing that. He had a bunch of, we had a bunch of VHS tapes, not the VHS-C, but regular VHS. And he bought a VCR off of eBay, and, he ripped it. It was like, I don't know how many he had, but he, just used a capture card, put it to his machine, and then use some sort of software. I'm not sure if it was OBS or something else, but he, whatever he did, he used it, and now when he put them up on the server so we can get to them. I think they're like old home videos or something like that.
Yeah, that's what these are.
Anything that'll take HDMI in, or you can find capture cards that'll do other outputs if you need.
Yeah, you can get the capture cards. So like he got an old capture card, and he's doing it on an old machine. So he's doing it on like a Windows 98 machine for whatever reason. But anyway, and he had the the old regular in and out, whatever you call those, RCA cables or whatever they were.
Yeah, composite video.
Yeah, I remember seeing those Hapage, I think was the name of the company or whatever.
Oh yeah.
It had all that those kind of connectors.
You can find everything you need on eBay. You just
Yeah.
As the public librarian here, I have to say, check out your local library, Rocco, because a lot of libraries now have collections that are called Library of Things, and one of the popular items is devices where you can transfer like VHS tapes onto a computer.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Nice.
I did that many years ago, Rocco. I've got a whole heap of family video on, and even my wedding was an 1.5-hour VHS video. That's all captured onto digital. So just in case the tape wears out, because it's not something you go back and watch on a regular basis or anything like that. It's just, just for keepsake pretty much. But
well, I mean, obviously I haven't seen these in years, so I don't even know what's on them. I know they're old home videos, and you wouldn't watch them every day, but man, I want to keep them, I don't want them to just me to go actually wait another 10 years and then come to the point where I want to do it and then they're gone or they're unreadable or whatever. So
I've still got 2 VHS players sitting around somewhere, so just in case I ever want to do some more. But I think I captured most of it. It took me hours and hundreds of hours to do that.
Yep.
I think I had a capture card in my desktop computer, and I think it came with its own software. I cannot remember. It was a long time ago, but I just spent hours just capturing all this video. But now I just look back and look at the kids, because my kids are 19 and 23. You look back when they were like 2-3 years old. It's just incredible to be able to just watch it on your own computer rather than get out an old VHS player.
Yeah, well, I have nothing but time, so yeah, that'll work out.
A quick eBay peruse, maybe about $75 to get the equipment, and $5-10 for the adapters for cable wise, something like that, to HDMI. And then I don't know. I would just guess $100 to get it all done.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Nope.
All right, we are out of time. These shows go so fast sometimes, dude. I don't know. Sometimes they go slow, and sometimes they go really fast. And this one was a fast show. So, everybody gets the last word
every week.
We do. It's a normal happening. Dan, last word.
Thanks, Rocco, as always. It's great to get together, and it does go fast. And I don't know. It's good to be with everybody. So,
yep.
Thanks.
Thanks for your help, Dan.
Absolutely.
Dave Jones, sir.
Thanks, Rocco, for a great show. you're right about the show going fast. It's like the conversation about Regolith went fast, and I was like, oh boy, what are we going to do with the rest of the time? And then I blinked, and now it's all over. I can't believe it. But it was a lot of a lot of good conversation. Really enjoyed it.
All right, Daniel, last word.
Yeah, thanks for the stream, Rocco, as usual. I'm glad I was able to make it tonight. Really good conversation. Enjoyed Regulus for the few hours that I was able to play with it, and I like this going through the apps thing too. That's pretty cool. So can't wait till next week.
All right, Aris.
Thank you very much for the stream. I'll keep testing out Regolith, and I'll enjoy next week no distro.
Nate.
I can't believe it's over already. Man, it's like it just started. See you next week.
Big Pod. I think Big Pod fell asleep. Tony.
It happens.
Wait. Big Pod's back.
Yeah. I was just editing a description of video.
Last word, brother.
Thanks. And see you next week.
Okay. Tony.
No, it's not installed.
Oh man, Tony, you
That's
disappoint
the
me.
first week you've said that, and I don't know how long.
It makes a change. It's nice to have a break occasionally, to be fair.
Yep.
Especially from tiling window managers. But great show, Rocco. Glad to see everyone. Take care all till next week, and I look forward to seeing you all in the same time, the same place. And that's about all I've got to say.
Paul, last word.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Great show. See you next week.
Paul, your lips aren't moving. I don't know what's going on. Colin, last word.
Yes, thanks, Rock and Co, for the platform. I too am really enjoying these chats about applications. It's a very good subject. So thanks for putting it on, and have a good week, and see you all next week.
Bill.
Hey, Rocco. So thank you. But there was this weird thing that I listened to when I got back from camping this weekend, Linux user space, and I think there's some Leo guy, Dan guy, Rocco, some Joe.
Never heard of him.
No,
I don't know where Joe is tonight.
Yeah, it was a really interesting show, and I guess it's because you don't want to do any more video editing that this is just an audio podcast.
Right.
Well, okay. I'll be perfectly honest with you, Bill. When we talked about it, we said, at some point there might be video, but no, I'm not doing it. I can't.
He forbid us.
I
He was
can't.
like, no, we're not doing video ever.
Absolutely no, never.
No, seriously, it was great to listen to. It was a great show, and I look forward to hearing more non-KDE discussion.
Hey, we're recording Monday. Just
yeah. Yep.
Jinda, last word.
Thank you, Rocco. I'll see you all guys next week, and stay out of trouble.
Jason, last word.
Well, again, thank you guys for everybody that helps support the show and puts the show on, does all the video editing and all that kind of stuff for all the other shows and things of that nature. It's great to be here. Great to have great conversations. I know we're not doing a distro thing next week, so poor Tony here couldn't get it installed early. But at least we have some great conversations. I know that a lot of these apps that we're talking about, I haven't really used. I don't do photo editing or video editing, so it's all new to me. But it's still great to have discussions and learn some new things. You guys have a great night, and I'll see you next week.
Steve.
Oh, thanks, Rock and Co, for providing my lug fix for this week. Actually, can kind of blame Nate that I'm here, because I was messaging with him this week, and I was saying, hey, I really need some face-to-face geek fix, but socially distancing. And he said, Biddle. So
right.
I had to show up because we could socially distance safely here. And maybe a topic to consider, since we're off of the distro talk, which, by the way, thank you. maybe everybody, as you're could mention what new things you've learned in Linux while you've been sheltering in place during the last few months. If anybody's got anything interesting that they've learned, something new, that might be a cool topic.
That's a great topic, Steve.
Yeah.
And I am more than open to suggestions on future topics that will take up some time. So feel free to suggest some more. And then if anybody else wants to, that's great. All right, Adam.
Thanks to the show. Good times had by all. Enjoy.
Computer Kid.
Thanks for letting me hang out with some geeks tonight, and I hope we can have some more cool conversations like this in the next weeks. Kind of sad there weren't more distros because I just now got machines that I can hop on, but I'll just hop on my own. It'll be okay.
Yeah, there's nothing saying you
You'll be
can't
all right.
hop, dude. Leo, last word.
If Droid Cam can stop crashing on me, I would be so happy. I was totally expecting. I hadn't messed with it in like 15 minutes, so it's probably never gonna do it ever again. But I was totally expecting it to have frozen, and I was gonna be like, "Look at this! Look at my screen!" But it's working. So, yeah. Anyway, Droid Cam, you guys are awesome. But I mean, this last update, stop it, stop
Yep.
it.
Eric, last word.
Well, thanks for doing this, Rocco. I appreciate you always putting this together, and I agree with you. Some shows, it's like I don't know, it feels long, and man, this one was short. So, kind of stinks that I have to wait a whole week to do it again. So, anyway, everyone stay safe, have a great week, and hopefully I will be back next week.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Linux User Space, check that out. We will be recording Monday and releasing the following Monday. Linux Spotlight, Eric IT Guy is the latest Linux Spotlight. Because of recent issues I've had, I have not got any scheduled Linux Spotlights. They will be coming back. I just got to get a little bit of time together and restart the whole process. So, because it wouldn't be cool to cancel on somebody after I've scheduled them on an interview. So we'll leave it at that. All right. We will see you guys next week. But until then, long live Linux.
See you,
everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Till next.